Why not? It's
We're
fine.
waiting.
You're the chair. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Dorchester County. Let me turn my microphone on. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Dorchester County Conservation and Greenbelt Advisory Commission. Ms. Hughes, if you would lead us in the invocation and the pledge.
All right. Please bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, we are so grateful that you've assembled us here tonight. We ask you to go with each and every one and carry them home safely tonight. And God, we ask you to help us all make the right decisions in regard to all of these important issues that affect our county and our citizens. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Welcome.
We'll give Mr. Taylor a moment.
Taylor. Hello, Mr. Taylor. Yeah, I'm glad you.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from our June 5th meeting.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Nope, no nays, so the motion carries. All right, at this time, we will, Mr. Hunter, are you giving the presentation for the Ashley River? Oh, you are, sir, I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a motion first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda for today to go into an executive session following these presentations to be able to discuss some contractual matters.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope, the ayes have it. Motion carries. All right, now, sir, if you would, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you,
afternoon.
Mr. Chairman. And my name is David Ray. I am the Chief Conservation Officer for the Low Country Land Trust, and I'm pleased to be here to present to you on the Ashley River Berry Tract. And hello, staff members and commission members. Is the presentation on the computer here?
I'm sorry. Okay. You did, it's my fault.
All right. Well, let me make this thing operate.
Oh, you got it on your little screen?
Yeah.
Right on this one.
Thank you.
How do you turn it on? How do you turn this on?
Not sure,
This one?
no clue. Is there an issue with this
This one?
monitor that we're aware of?
To turn it on?
The one on the right here is on.
Yeah,
Phyllis, you want to just move down here?
I can.
I didn't know your name was Phyllis, but come on.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ray, as you
right.
were, sir.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say congratulations to everybody who has put this program together and for kicking it off. And we are very excited at Low Country Land Trust to be able to present to you some of the first projects coming forward. So thank you for your consideration. And as you go through the process of getting the program up and running, we also want to be a resource to you all. So please let us know anything that we can do that will be helpful to you as the program continues to develop. So the Berry Tract is a really special piece of land, and I want to first just tell you about some of the things that are special about it. You can see on the map on the left the general location of the property in the county. The second map in the middle there shows the Ashley River Historic District, and this property does lie within that 23,000 acre landscape that is on the National Register of Historic Places. It's actually, I believe, the National Trust for Historic Preservation is going to be going for National Landmark status, which is the highest status you can get. So really important place, not only for our state, for our region and our state, but also nationally. It's the pink tract, as you can see it right there. Then on the right, you can see an aerial photo of this rather uniformly shaped project and piece of land, but it's a really special place. One of the things about it is that it borders a national scenic byway on one side. On the other side, it borders a state scenic river, the Ashley River, which is also a blue trail designated by American Rivers, and the county also advertises that quite a bit. And this property is, I think, around mile 10.5 on the Ashley River Blue Trail. It's also within the area that's known as the Ashley River Heritage Trail, which is where at low tide you can see some shipwrecks and some ancient docks. So it has a lot of evidence of colonial times in this area. And it also has a variety of wildlife habitat on the property. One of the reasons that we've been able to apply to the National Coastal Wetlands Conservation Grant Program is because of the wetland habitat on the property and the bird habitat that's there. It's quite varied topographically for the low country. There's actually hills and bluffs and things like that on the property. And it's wooded and forested, and it goes down to marsh and down to the riverside. There is actually a cherry bark oak stand on the property that Tim Evans from Audubon Society has told me looks like it's a second growth forest. So it was cut one time and is getting to the point where it's virtually an old growth stand of cherry bark oak. So a unique piece of the forest there. And we invited the Coastal Master Naturalist Association to come out to the property and do a sort of a bio blitz on the property. And they found over 175 species just in one morning on the property of plants and animals, birds, and we want to continue to catalog what lives on the property and visits the property. And then another part of what's important culturally and historically on the property is that this parcel was actually part of the 12,000 acre grant to the Lord Anthony Ashley Cooper, his so-called barony, in 1675, and the land was actually deeded, well, it was marked on a deed by, I think, 27 leaders of the Cusco tribe. And so it goes back to having a Native American history, and the Edisto Natchez Cusco tribe is interested in this region. It goes back to the earliest of colonial times. It goes back to rag plantation. There's evidence on the property uncovered by a survey of the quarters of enslaved people on the property from rag plantation. And then when the phosphate works came in after the Civil War, some of that was turned into worker housing. So those elements actually were determined to make the property itself eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. So really, I'm just kind of going through the reasons why this is an important place to protect. It's got a lot of resources there. On this slide, just wanted to give you a picture of what it's like to be on the property. It's varied depending on where you are on the property. You can see a big tree there. You can see the marsh down by the Ashley River. There's a nice soil road going through the middle of the property and several roads that go off to the sides, making for the start of a trail system on the property. There's tidal creeks and just a lot of beauty and peace in this location. I want to talk to you about why we got involved in this property. There was a very direct threat of development on the property. In fact, what happened was the property was under contract with the same developers who developed the property across the road from here. And as you all probably know, there's a subdivision there called Watson Hill. Hundreds of houses have been built and are still slated to be built there. And you see here a design by the same company to put houses on this track going from the National Scenic Byway down to the State Scenic River. The people who care about this corridor and who live nearby were the ones that I really want to credit with. I always look to citizens who reach out and want to save land that's important from being developed, and that's what happened here. The citizens reached out to us and asked us if we could try to do something to save this land. And so we got involved. We put a contract in front of the landowners while it was still under contract with the developers. We were able to, when that came up for extension, to, instead of it being extended, for them to enter into a contract with Low Country Land Trust. And so we had the opportunity to protect it. Now, in order to put the funds together to protect it, we had to go through a process of applying to different grant-making agencies. And one of those was the Conservation Bank. Working with them, we determined that going for this federal grant for $1 million would be a good route to take. But in order to do that, we couldn't actually protect the property yet. So what we had to do was take out a bridge loan. We've done that. We have a $2.1 billion bridge loan on the property, and the property is not protected at this point, even though an LLC that Low Country Land Trust is a member of owns the property. We have just secured the opportunity to protect it. But if we can't bring the funding in to pay off that loan, we would have to sell the property unrestricted. So it's still vulnerable, but we have site security. So want to give you a picture, the financial picture here. So the fair market value of the property appraised toward the end of last year is $2,225,000. We were able to get it under contract for $2,200,000, so a donated value of $25,000. The sources of funding include pending applications to, I mentioned before, the National Coastal Wetlands Conservation Grant Program. That's a Fish and Wildlife Service program. South Carolina has been very successful in pulling in those dollars in recent years, particularly through the Conservation Bank. They made themselves an agency that was eligible to go after those funds, and they've done a great job working with organizations like ours to get those grant funds. We also have an application in front of the bank itself for the funds that they have that are appropriated by the legislature, and those are pending right now. The Conservation Bank will be meeting this month to make a decision, and the Fish and Wildlife Service will be meeting in November with their review committee to make a recommendation to the agency. The final decision would be made in January. We think we have a very good shot at those funds based on previous years' scoring and consultation with our local Fish and Wildlife Service staff, who've been wonderful to work with. We do have a couple of committed sources of funding. One is a great company that's headquartered nearby, Atlantic Packaging. They're just about 10 minutes up the road from this, and one of the wonderful things that they have done, and their very dynamic CEO, Wes Carter, who is very involved in not only the industry and trying to make packaging being more sustainable, but also in land conservation. And they are donating this funding as a way of offsetting the footprint of their industrial facilities. They want to serve as an example to other companies to support land conservation as a sort of a balance to the footprint of those facilities. Dorchester Trust Foundation has also committed to putting $25,000 into the purchase price of the property. And then our request to you is for $975,000 towards the purchase price of the property, along with $15,000 towards transaction costs on this. Last thing I want to leave you with is what the property will be. So I've told you a lot about the past and the present of the property, but I want you to think about the future of this place. And one of the really wonderful things, and another reason that this is such a pleasure to work on this, is that Dorchester County Parks has indicated that they want to make this a passive park for the county, that the county will manage and open up. I can't speak for the county, but my sense is that it would be low to no fee for people to get into this property. And so it's going to be one of the few places on this side of the river where people can actually get down to the river without paying a fee, particularly below the Bacon's Bridge area. And so once the funds are in place, the county's indicated that it would take ownership of it and operate it in that fashion. And it's, as I mentioned before, it's directly across the road from this new neighborhood where hundreds of families will be living. And it's less than 10 minutes from Somerville. And I think a place like this where people can get out in nature, particularly kids as they're growing up, it's harder and harder to do that. This will be a wonderful resource for people to enjoy nature, connect with it. Forests, marsh, the river, birds, and other wildlife. It'll be a place where people can engage in recreation. So they'll be able to hike on the property. It's on the river. Getting people down to the river will be something that the county park agency will have to figure out. At the very least, it can be a stop along the way of the Blue Trail, but I think there's a desire to try to get people down to the river from the property itself. And then it's also a place where people can connect with the region's history and culture. As I mentioned before, there's Native American history that's connected to this place. The earliest European settlement in the area, some of the earliest, is right here. African American history before the Civil War times. The industrial history that's very much part of the Ashley River District with the phosphate industry, and then just understanding the pressures of modern development and the importance of preserving special places. And so we love that part of the story is this company, Atlantic Packaging's idea to get out there, the idea that corporations should become part of leveraging public money to protect special places for the public. And so I want to just ask you all for your support as we request this $975,000 plus transaction costs from the Greenbelt program to leverage the significant state, federal, and private funding and secure this special place that will enrich the lives of Dorchester County residents for decades to come. And with that, I'm happy to field any questions or however you all would like to proceed.
Any questions from the commission?
I'd like to make a comment here. Wonderful presentation, David. Thank you.
Yes.
Congratulations on that, and congratulations on the application. It's one of the first that we've had a chance to really review and look at, and it's just packed with very vital and important information, and it's well laid out. Good job on it.
Thank you.
But let me say that I'm real familiar with this property, and as a younger guy, I hunted on this property, so go back a long ways. But more recently, and David alluded to the fact that the local master naturalist organization did a bio-blitz on this property, and I was privileged to be a member of that team that was there. And I can attest to the fact that around every little bend and behind every tree, there seemed to be something significant on this property. I mean, it was just loaded with natural resources and beauty that you would expect to find in an environment like that. You mentioned the cherry bark oaks, and recently I was walking another property with Tim Evans, and who is one of the most knowledgeable guys I know about timber and trees and grand trees and super grand trees and however he can judge them. And we saw a cherry bark oak, and I mentioned to him, I said, you know, this reminds me of some I saw on the Barry track. And I didn't know he had been on that track. You know, you mentioned it, and he brought it up too. It is a wonderful little forest of cherry bark oak there that I've never seen anything like it. I mean, so anyway, I was blown away with the property, and the concern I have, David, at this point, there seem to be a lot of ifs, you know, here as far as if you get funding from the other sources, and even if the county is going to maintain it as a passive park, which, you know, I would certainly hope. And I was just wondering if there's a plan B if you fail to get one leg of this funding. Is there a way to make up for it some other way?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. I think we certainly would try to do that. And it might involve digging up new sources of funding. It might involve going back to some of our regular funders. We're hopeful, based on the track record, we're hopeful that the big grant from the federal government will come through. The reason why we've brought these grant requests forward at this point is that we feel that there'd be some value when the Fish and Wildlife Service considers that application to be able to say that if you all make this grant, the grant money is there for this project to be completed, because they only do their process once a year, and it's kind of strung out over the course of the year. So it's kind of hard to go back to them quickly. So that's why we're asking the Conservation Bank now and asking the county now to make a decision on the funding request. We will do everything in our power, and we have a track record of getting projects done and moving on to Plan B to raise whatever money we need. But one of the things that we've done, I think, pretty well on this project to date is diversifying the funding sources going into it. I actually didn't name another funding source, which is the Ceres Foundation very generously made a grant. I didn't name it because it's not going into the purchase price, but they're helping us with transaction costs and the carrying costs of the loan, because we do have interest payments while the loan is in play. But anyways, I believe that we're going to get the funding that we're requesting, and if there's a shortfall, we'll figure out how to make it work. But your other question was about the county. So we got a letter of intent from the county at the time that we applied to the National Coastal Wetlands Conservation Grant Program. And they stated in the letter, Jason Ward signed the letter and said that he couldn't speak for the council or for the commission as to what the size of the grant would be, but he thought that it could be up to the amount that we have requested based on some general conversations. And then also said that the county wanted to take on the property as a park. So, and I've, as recently as a week ago, spoken with Austin Zuniga just to ask, is that still in your mind that this would be a park? And he said, yes, it would. Again, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but just reporting the conversations that we've had.
David, I've got a question. I've been scrolling through. I haven't been able to find it right off the bat. When is the money due for the bridge loan to be paid off?
It's a 2-year loan. So we took it out at the end of December of last year. So the end of next year would be when it's due. We expect that the National Coastal Wetlands Grant award decision, we would get word on that around January of next year. And then the funding is typically available in the late spring, early summer. And so we would be ready to move, assuming all these other funding sources are in place, we would be ready to move on closing in the summer, working with the county.
Gotcha.
To get the property transferred to them, and then we could pay off the loan well before the end of the loan term.
Okay, thank you.
David, Daniel's on the call, and he has a statement.
Okay.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have a brief comment and then a question. I think it's probably for Carolina for the question, but I'll just pose it generally, and whoever's best qualified to answer can do so. First, David, I just want to commend you for this application. I think this proposal typifies exactly what the Greenbelt Commission, Advisory Commission should be pursuing. I think that the unique combination of qualifications of this property, the leverage of additional funding sources, and the imminent threat that the property is under from development really speaks to just an incredibly strong case for support. So I just want to publicly commend you for that. Because I was on the board that approved one of those other funding sources, I do feel I need to recuse myself from formally voting on this proposal, but I would be remiss if I did not speak to its merit. My only concern, which Catherine kind of indicated, is what happens if we end up not getting all these other funding sources and if the project falls through. So procedurally, could the county recommend Greenbelt funding be allocated? And if, in the worst case scenario, no other funding materialized, could we regain that, could we get those funds back?
Yes. There can be a recommendation based on contingencies. So based on the contingency that they receive the funds from these approved sources. And if they do not, then the funds would have to be returned, or the funds would be granted at a later date when everything would be ready for purchase.
Okay,
Depending on-
David, would a contingent approval meet your needs for making a strong case to some of the other funders that, you know, the county's ready, they only want to move forward if all the other pieces come into place, but that we're fully behind this? Would that serve your purpose, David?
I think so. In a way, it's understood that we would have to put that all together to use the county's money, but I think certainly you could express the contingency. I would say probably just not specify it as being exactly what we've laid out. My hope is that it will work out that way, that we've got a pretty good read on it, but rather than making the contingency be very specific, making it be that it would be that the full amount in order to secure the property would be secured in funding.
Correct. Yeah, no, we certainly wouldn't want to hold you to getting that amount of funding from each of the funding sources you've identified. I think we're just concerned about making sure that it's there, not who it's from.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Mr. Chair.
Anything else from any of the?
Okay, David, I had a question. There's been extensive excavation of artifacts on the property, and it appeared from the map I saw to go from east to west. And is there going to be any way that residents will be able to somehow go through to the marsh, the river, without disturbing any of the work that has been done? And is the work completed already, or is it still ongoing?
The work was done as a due diligence item, actually, by the potential developer of the property. They needed to understand the historic resources, if any, on the property. And so they did that study, and then there's no exposed resources there now. They're there under the ground, but they're not exposed. So I think whether the future owner of the property decides to further explore those is open to them, the county, in other words, but it actually doesn't extend all the way across the property in terms of, there's a soil road that goes right up the middle of the property and all the way to the bluff that then goes down to the river, and you can go through there and not get to the places. They didn't extend the digging and the identification of the resource into the road. So I've never actually encountered it. I've known it's off in the woods on the side, but I've been able to get, and the groups that we've taken out there have been able to get to the back of the property without disturbing any of the resources. So that's my understanding just from reading the document and being out on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Is that it from David? All right, perfect. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, sir. Connor, are you ready, sir?
Good evening,
Good evening.
committee and Dorchester staff. Grateful to be here to present the Young's Farm Conservation Easement Project for Dorchester County Greenbelt Program's consideration. So the property is 225 acres, and it'll be a conservation easement project. The landowners are Melvin and Rita Young. It is one tax parcel, but two separate actual parcels, so it's under one tax ID. It's got frontage on both Fairfield and Quaker Roads, and Polk Swamp also borders it on the south and southwest side. And it's just outside of the municipal bounds of St. George. You can see by the aerial there, it's about half open ag field and half forested. The project goals and conservation values of the property are to protect open space for sustainable agriculture and forestry practices, preservation of relatively natural habitat and biodiversity, preservation of enhancement of downstream water quality, and the preservation of scenic views and the rural character of the area. So you see the 116 acres of this property has been designated prime agricultural soils by the USDA, 28 acres of which are of importance of South Carolina. 104 acres of the property is also designated as forested wetlands according to National Wetlands Inventory data. The tillable acreage of the property is leased out to a local farmer who seasonally farms the property and provides the youngs with oat hay for their livestock in exchange for the ability to farm the rest of the season. And generally it's corn and soybeans that he grows the remainder of the year. They're extremely passionate about their livestock that they keep on the property, which are a few cows, a few llamas, and some goats and donkeys. The primary motivation for their conservation easement is strictly conservation, and they came to us at the beginning of this year extremely concerned about development in the area and concerned about the future of their property and the future of agriculture in the area. Mr. Melvin Young has been in the agricultural business for his entire career and is extremely passionate about preserving prime soils for agriculture. They've been seeing the development around St. George just begin to become fragmented, and these larger farm properties become developed and converting into dense planned housing subdivisions. So they really wish for their farm to remain in its presently current condition. While the threat of a dense housing development is somewhat low based on the new zoning ordinances that were enacted this year, it could still be fractured into as many as 10 smaller parcels. And if this were to occur, all of the prime soils and the heritage culture of local agriculture would likely be lost forever. Let's see. So the county goals that this project would serve would be to employ the use of conservation easements to preserve agricultural lands and environmentally sensitive lands and waterways. Also to protect and preserve rural lands which define an important part of our character, as well as limit unchecked land use change associated with urban sprawl to keep designated parcels of land permanently undeveloped. When we were working through this process and applying through the Dorchester program, we learned of the Polk Swamp Restoration Project that's happening right at this property. And so the conservation easement project will complement this restoration project extremely well. It'll buffer the swamp from impervious surface and clear cutting and ensure very little, if any, non-point source pollution and nutrients make it to this restoration through the future of this project. And I would assume y'all are fairly familiar with the Polk Swamp project, but it ensures that this part of Polk Swamp and the restoration site will stay under single ownership. The project will restore a large portion of bottomland hardwood forest that was critically damaged by Hurricane Hugo in '89. The plan is to replant bald cypress and tupelo, which was there naturally, and remove invasive species and other flow restrictions. The portions of Polk Swamp will be protected via a 300-foot swamp buffer, and that'll restrict impervious surface within that 300 feet as well as agricultural activities and only allowing limited forestry practices. And this will ensure, like I say, against future sources of pollution and nutrient loading from the protected property. Got a few pictures also here. This shows a large agricultural field with some forested wetlands that border the Polk Swamp portion that has the restoration project. Here's the area where the home site and a few agricultural structures are, surrounded by beautiful mixed hardwood and pine forest, cornfields, soybean fields. And this property also contains a small cemetery that I believe started in 1863. And George Dukes was the first marked grave, and he was mortally wounded in the Battle of Chickamauga in Georgia in 1863. And this cemetery was then passed down through his estate to the rest of the Dukes family and is still housing them to this day. And the Youngs, it was just a small isolated parcel within theirs, but they deeded easement access to that cemetery for them. And the easement is very restrictive, very simple, and they were extremely motivated to be as restrictive as possible on this easement. It allows for no subdivisions of the protected property. The impervious surface is limited to 50,000 square feet, which is a tad higher than normal, and this was intended by the grantor, the Youngs, to provide opportunity for future landowners to continue agricultural practices on the property. 2 residential structures, 1 existing, and so 1 future potential residential structure. Fairfield Roads and Quaker Road will also have 300 feet buffers, and same as the Polk Swamp buffer, they'll prevent impervious surface structures and allow for limited forestry practices. Agricultural, livestock, and forestry activities are permitted. And then significant trees that will be requiring approval for removal are live oaks, bald cypress, and southern magnolia of 18 inches or greater. And that is about all. While not as dazzling as the Berry tract, it's a little more simple. Actually, I need to go back to the funding portion. We didn't go over that. So the appraised fair market value of the property prior to any of the restrictions is $2.11 million. The conservation easement value, due to the nature of that zoning ordinance, is around $557,000 because of the subdivision restrictions for properties not on town water. So the grant request, we have requested $100,000 from South Carolina Conservation Bank, which is pending approval now, and that will be decided at their next meeting this month. And then we're asking from the Dorchester County Greenbelt for $100,000 to match that. And those together will total 36% of the easement value, each representing 18%. And then the landowner will be donating the rest of the value of the easement, which is $357,000. The total match to the Dorchester County funds will be $457,000, representing a 457% match to the $100,000. And the total estimated project cost, inclusive of landowner costs, is those come out to $13,800. So the total estimated project cost is $569,800. And I'd like to open it up for any questions.
I have a couple.
Yes,
Would
ma'am.
you go back to the price sheet for me, if you
Sure.
don't mind? What I read, this is a private owners.
Yes,
Moved here back in 2003. Don't really intend to sell the property, and I understand why they want a conservation. What the part I don't understand is, why would they have to pay anything if it's their property? Why would they have to pay any money? Because normally when you put your land in trust, you receive
That's a
money.
landowner donation of the remainder of the value. So that's their donation of that easement value.
Okay. And they don't intend to open it at all to the public?
No, ma'am.
None at all? I know exactly where the property is. There used to be a nursery right down there from, are they part of that nursery?
They are not.
They're
No,
not, so it's a little bit further down.
Just a little bit further downfield.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is. They're not really in the town limits as far as development. I don't think the water and sewer's out there anywhere at all.
Right.
I don't think it's gonna be out there for a while.
And that, hence that easement values
So,
based on a recreational value.
so if they wanna put this land in conservation, and they come to you, I wanna put my land in conservation, do you not, Mr. Ray, I know you did our site out there at the Dorchester Heritage Center. You know, we own the property, so we want to put in conservation. Mr. Ray, when we talked to you, it was like, we would get something to put it in conservation. It wasn't that we were going to have to pay anything or any of that. I guess I just don't quite understand the process of paying for this when they own the property, it's their farm, they live on it, they lease land out for agriculture, so they're bringing in income that way. I guess I just don't quite understand the ask about putting Greenbelt money into it. I guess I just don't understand it.
Sure.
Maybe
so-
someone else can help me understand it.
So the value of the rights that they're giving up through the easement is worth that $557,000. And so they will not be able to subdivide and sell.
Okay.
And so that's the main way they would retain that value. And so we are seeking grant monies to help pay for those rights that they're giving up. And then they are going to donate the remainder of that value to be held in trust with Low Country Land Trust.
They're donating the value, they're not donating physical
Right,
Correct.
money.
exactly.
The value of
And
the,
that in turn could bring tax revenue.
Oh, yeah,
or
they'll
reduce
get
taxes.
taxes for that too.
So-
Okay. Thank you. I just didn't quite understand that.
Any other questions for Hunter? No? Well, thank you, Hunter.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would now like to make a motion to go into executive session so that we can discuss these two contractual matters.
Okay, I'll second that.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We're in executive session.
Daniel? Hello?
Yes.
So
Yep.
we're gonna go into executive session now. We'll give you a call over there so you can join us in the executive session. And when we finish up, we'll call you back here in the council chambers.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Carolina.
Thanks.
Bye.
Perfect, thank you so much.
So that's why I came, because I'm very interested in that. People in my neighborhood, I live in the Pivot Estates. And my house backs up to the, horse, like I can walk through the horse farm, and then I can go through there and get to the dairy cow, which which we used to walk. My husband will never go and walk it, but then when also trying to find this one, I just like to walk it. But everybody in Mike and Debbie
Yeah.
and Sue Wayman and all of them, and George, Grady, Daniel,
Yeah.
they're all there.
Good afternoon. Thank you for calling EPC. How may I help you?
Oh, they're so quiet.
Years of training.
And your daughter looks exactly like you.
You should see, I have a video of one of the council meetings from like 2020 or 2021. I didn't have to present.
Hello, this is Daniel.
Perfect, thank you, sir.
It's great fun.
Yes, sir, because you trust me that much. And at this time, I'd like to bring us out of executive session. The commission discussed the previous announced items of some contractual nature, and no action was taken. So we are now back in regular session. Mr. Taylor?
I make a motion that we make a recommendation to the county that we fully support the Barry tract.
With conditions, yeah.
Yeah, with the condition that if the other funding comes through, then we will certainly support it.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
All right. So that motion carries.
And additionally to that, I make a motion that we also support the Young's Farm application with the contingency that the additional $100,000 does come through for the additional grant. But we do support the Young tract as well.
Do
I
have a
second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. That motion carries. All right, at this time, we will move to the Greenbelt Program Ordinance discussion.
So something we wanted to discuss with you guys today is the fact that we have two official ordinances regarding the Greenbelt. One is the stipulation of the Greenbelt funds that comes from the 2022 1-cent tax referendum, and the other one is the creation of the Conservation and Greenbelt Advisory Commission. However, there is no official ordinance designating how these funds should be spent. There are restrictions or guidelines in any other way. Though that is something we wanted to discuss with you guys today, if you thought we should create an ordinance with very specific guidelines. And if you want to discuss that a little bit more, think upon that, you can do that as well. But that is something we wanted to bring to you guys.
Thank you. Any questions? Or maybe we think about it, and then next meeting, we'll bring it up during old business?
Just to clarify, so I know what to think about, we're thinking about two different ordinances. One, laying out how to spend the funds, and two, being creating an ordinance on how this commission is created.
No, the ordinance already exists that created the Greenbelt Commission, Advisory Commission, but there is no ordinance basically designating how the funds should be spent, any restrictions, guidelines on how funds should be returned if need be, just very technical guidelines.
Okay.
So that is something that we, I guess, are thinking of.
Yeah, more of a framework for you to work within, outlining a little bit better maybe your processes in an ordinance form, or like Carolina was saying, do you, I guess, I don't want to say limit or restrict, but better outline the use of funds, what qualifies, what doesn't qualify. If funds are granted, are there then limitations that are placed on the property? Because right now, I think everybody's familiar, if you get funds from the State Conservation Bank, there are limitations on how you can use that property. Do we want to put those types of restrictions on properties? If we use our funds for that, are we then going to say no active recreation type uses or something along those lines? So we just want to get you all thinking about whether or not we want to create that framework, and if we do, what do we want to include in it? And I think you could even, if you wanted to, go to Charleston County's Greenbelt program. I'm not saying we would copy theirs, but I think you could see just what types of items they include in their ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
I really like the idea of working together with county council to codify, what we've all been working towards with this Greenbelt plan, and specifically defining those top 10 suitable regions for preservation and conservation. I think there's a lot of value in putting that kind of thing in writing and in public. So I think that'd be a great topic for further conversation.
Certainly. I agree. All right, anything else? All right, I guess we have no one here for public time. Miss Rita Mae Rain? Okay. All right, well, if that's all we have for tonight,
I make a motion to adjourn.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Daniel?
Yes, I
Any opposed?
Do you know the date of the next meeting, Carolina?
That should be the second.
Oh, I don't have that. Second, October 2nd? Okay.
Meeting adjourned.